Hello and welcome to yet another podcast. This is once again some sort of recap and preview episode. I was supposed to do one for February and then preview March, but well, I forgot. So now we recap February, we recap March, and then we preview what is coming up in April. If you saw the last recap episode, you know the guys. We have Scotty from M&M Gaming. He's casting, he's playing, and then we have Bits, who's a player for Venture and also a player in the TrackMania Grand League. I didn't want to waste any time on you guys introducing yourself, but let's start off with Gaming WinterFest. Scotty, you went into that event, you played that event. Now, 1 month later, what is the feeling you're left with?
Well, my feeling I was left with from Gaming Winterfest is substantially better than it was last year, but that's both in terms of the actual event experience, since last year I didn't go, and secondly, because it's in my eyes it seems to have redeemed itself a bit this year. First of all, the maps were of a good high quality. I enjoyed playing the maps. I enjoyed playing matches on the maps, training them. They were interesting. That kind of side of things left me a good impression as well. Going into it, knowing it had such a kind of a poor reputation as a result of the previous two events that they put up. As I said, I believe they've redeemed themselves. They've set a good case for, continued faith in them going forward. And look back on Gaming Winterfest as both a success for me personally and something I'm interested to see how it develops going forward with their plans for perhaps future events.
Yeah, I made a case that this might be the last chance and maybe the third time was a charm, and in my eyes it was. But from your perspective now, would you say that if Gaming Winterfest is coming up next year, you would be more hyped going then than you was going this year?
Well, there's two factors that would go into that. First of all, I would be more hyped about it because this time when I was going into it, I had a lot of concern as to the standard of the event, what I would be able to expect. There was some minor issues when we were there. For example, the final was shown on the big screen, but there was no sound to it. It was just simply they punched up spam stream in the big stage and just turned off the volume kind of thing. So there is still some teething issues for them, but I suppose things like that are a bit easier to fix. But in terms of being hyped for it, I think because they set a good case for themselves this time, this might entice more people to go to it, as that was one of the main issues. However, that was a bit more out of the tournament organisers' control because they'd built up a kind of a lack of goodwill, so to speak. A kind of, as I said, a shoddy reputation. So a lot of your established players steered clear of it. I mean, it says a lot for Alan in France when the half and half. There's only 50% of the players there are actually French, so. I guess I'm going to be more hyped for it next year if people decide to go and if they learn from the mistakes as they appeared to have done this year.
Bits, you are the only one out of the three of us who followed this event from home and followed it on stream. How much of the event did you follow, and what was the experience you got from watching it on stream?
Well, it was quite a fun event to watch. I watched it pretty much the entire event that I could. Of course, I expected more from Scotty, but maybe next time. First of all, I was glad to see that there were no more 8-hour delays, or what was it last time?
Yeah, like so, 7 hours.
So it appears that they have learned, and I heard from other people that it was pretty much flawless this time. There were some minor issues, but nothing that big. And in terms of the event itself, well. I think there were clear groups of different skilled people in this event. You could see it clearly in the brackets, and it was representative in matches. For example, Kappa and Tween were by far ahead of other players, ahead of guys like Mathix and Dachi, who were third or fourth, and behind them it was Soldier and Scotsman. And it was these clear groups of, these clear pairs of people who are just a slight level below. So it was quite interesting to see. But yeah, overall, I kind of enjoyed it to watch. And especially the last rounds, that I was quite disappointed to see that Tween couldn't close out in his first finalist attempt. But But yeah, again, congrats to Kappa for winning it, because he did it in his first attempt and showed like that he indeed is one of the top players, maybe the best player we got right now.
Yeah, yeah. Coming off like this is the first offline tech event since we had the TrackMania World Championship back in October. Did you feel that maybe this event is less hyped because it was just after that big one, or would you say that this is more hyped since it comes off that great final that we had back in October, maybe arguably the best final ever?
I'm not sure one way or the other. It sort of felt like a good event. In general, people were kind of hyped for it, but I wouldn't say it was like some next step after the World Championship. Like people expected that level. I think it was just more or less a regular event.
Yeah, and Scotty, what do you say coming off TrackMania World Championship? Then we had, of course, TrackMania Grand League taking place. Some people say that tech is dead. Then this offline event comes up. Tech is shown. Would you say that this event is, hurting of these statements that tech is dead? Or would you say that maybe this is even helping this event? The community have a chance to show organizers that tech is in fact not dead. We want tech to be hosted at offline events.
Well, it's hard to compare with the stature of TrackMania World Championship and Gaming Winterfest, because they're two completely different scales of events, and the events that were hosting them. Example, Paris Games Week compared to Gaming Winterfest. It's kind of hard to compare that, but I think at the very least, in terms of if you look just purely from the event standpoint, with what they had to work with, as in the players who were being showcased, the maps that were there, and the standard of competition, it was a good tournament to watch. It was fun to watch. It was interesting. The only problem is there wasn't really many storylines going into it, as in you weren't looking at it thinking, I have no idea who's going to get this place or the next place. I went into the tournament, and for even for 2 weeks going into it, I knew I was going to place fifth or sixth. Maybe on a great day I would finish fourth. I knew the final would be Tween, Kappa, and Dutchy, with the exception of Kappa, since he kept saying he wasn't playing. And it would be Mathix, me, and Soldier for the remaining spots. Perhaps Easy could challenge as well. That was the only problem going into that event, which kind of harmed its viewability, so to speak, as it almost felt predetermined. I mean, there was maybe going to be, like, say, Kappa or Tween would switch around. Me and Soldier might switch around, something like that. But it was hard going into that to then, point to someone on the outside, a well-versed TrackMania fan, so to speak, and they would know what's going to happen at that event. So that side of things was a bit of a problem. But again, I don't think that was within the tournament's control. You can't make players turn up. You can't make people train more or be better or something like that. But I think it did put up a good advert for tech. At least they showed they could pull it off this time after the problems they had the last few years. And I mean, one more LAN that supports having a tech event shows that it's not necessarily just dead in the water. It is something that tournament organisers are willing to work with.
Yeah, Bits talking about maybe you had a few players just going here, so it was pretty clear what kind of groups players would face in terms of skill. But should an organizers like Gaming Winterfest think about when trying to attract new people? Is it simply now that they have shown that, okay, we can host events without problems and then people will show up? Or is there other stuff they have to do to attract more players and maybe better players as well?
I don't know if there's much that they can do. Like, they should have one problem that this event had is that last year it had pretty bad reputation, so that definitely didn't help. And I think after this one, it will have a better next year. But you simply can't make players come. I mean, you could increase the prize pool, but that can only go so far. And I'm not sure. I think they're gonna have a better next year, and maybe we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, and that maybe brings up a good shifting point to La Catalane, the newest tech event in TrackMania. It also didn't have many players signing up. I believe we ended up with 12 players in the end. Most notable names attending there, Bren, Cap, and Yo-Yo, as well as, of course, probably the biggest name in TrackMania, Serrator. Scotty, this you have attended to probably the most offline events in the last, what you say, 20 months or so, at least from people I know. But why didn't you go to La Catalane?
La Catalane, the reason I didn't go is because I'm unfortunately not a millionaire. I am working on it, but nevertheless, it is a slow process. However, it is within my 5-year plan to win the lottery, so at least watch this space. Anyway, the reason why I didn't go is exactly as I said, in less crude terms, shall we say, I just simply didn't have enough money. I mean, I'm even struggling with Gamers Assembly, and that's with support from M&M and the fact we're sharing a lot of the costs between each other. So, financially, it would have been impossible for me to go to Catalan. I would have loved to have gone there. I've never been to that region of France. I could have also crossed into Spain. I've never been into Spain, so I would have honestly have loved to went there. But I mean, yeah, I just couldn't do it. Unfortunately for me. So I mean, if they continue to do it next year, though, I mean, I can only hope that I'll be in a better place so that I'll actually be able to afford it.
Yeah, and Bits, you are, like I said, you were the only of us who watch Gaming Winterfest from home. Now you also watch La Catalane from home. How would you compare these two offline events that is hosted in 2019 so far?
Well, there was clearly like a lack of players for Catalan, and the different skill levels were quite clear to see. Even in grand final, it was pretty convincing who was at the top and who was quite further behind. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's the question again.
Yeah, how would you compare this event to Gaming Winterfest? Were you more hyped for this? Were you less hyped? What's your feeling as a viewer from home?
Definitely not, because I knew it was going to be a lower level event, and it was pretty decent. At least the finals were. That's actually as much as I could have watched, just because it clashed with other things. And yeah, I think the finals were all right, but other than that, I don't think it was a good level matches or nothing that stands out from something like Gaming Winterfest. Less players, lower level, skill level, and yeah, it wasn't as great, but it was still all right to watch.
And Scotty, you were staying at home, but it was not like you didn't have any impact on the event. You were casting it. How was it to cast this event for you?
Well, first of all, it was long. I mean, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning and finishing at about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So, I mean, it was a long event to do because it was all within one day. But it's one of the more enjoyable experiences I've had in casting, in the sense that because there was such a big skill gap, I was able to have a bit more informal or a bit more fun casts for the matches of which were less serious. The players who were there just to have fun, just to experience it and things like that, so that I could enjoy it along with the chat who were experiencing it and the general audience. I mean, as again, only the typical LAN issues for the sides of my experience with it, in the sense of having to, rely upon a single person for information that isn't always able to come back to you to tell you where you should be, when you should be there, things like that. And kind of big breaks between matches meant it was quite a long day for me. But again, I really enjoyed casting it. The winner bracket final and the grand final, which comprised of the same players, were very interesting matches to cast, both for me as an actual caster, as in there was a lot of things for me to look at, things I could talk about. And also for me as just a general player, because of course they're played in the same maps as Gamers Assembly, so I was kind of able to get a bit of an inside info as to what kind of times and stuff I should be looking at. So overall it was good for me from the outside.
Yeah, and talking about the players there, like you said, you had the same map pack as for Gamers Assembly. I believe people watch it, maybe see who is looking the strongest, and in the end it was not an unfamiliar face from Gamers Assembly. It was Yo-Yo who ended up winning it. What should you make of his performance, or what did you make of his performance, Scotty?
Well, the main thing about Yo-Yo's performance is he wasn't the fastest player. Well, he did get all the fastest times, if I remember correctly, apart from the Zerator map, at least as per the Draconia website. However, Yo-Yo's strength in that tournament was primarily his consistency. When you look at the times compared to what the top deadies are on these sort of maps, already with 2 weeks to go, when Yo-Yo's already doing regular strong times, then he's showing he's kind of throwing down the gauntlet to those who are watching, trying to get an eye, try to scout out the GA competition. So he's kind of throwing down the gauntlet to them and say, look what I can do. He's showed he's strong and he's showed he's consistent already. And that's a Yo-Yo that only stands to improve as Gamers Assembly comes closer and it gets more hours in.
And bits like we talk about, this event used the same map pack like we will see at Gamers Assembly. Is that a trend that you want to see in future events, that maybe some events share map pack, and that maybe players who want to attend both don't have to train 2 different map packs?
Oh, certainly, especially if the events are like within a month of or apart from each other. Then yeah, it's definitely a trend I want to see, because players are, when they have to choose between one event or another, it kind of, I don't think we're that big enough of a scene to force players to do that and clash with each other. I think it should grow more organically. And one thing you forgot about the maps, that it's not the exact same as Gamers Assembly map. There's one particular map that caused some controversy for some players that didn't want to attend it just because of that map. And I guess they got some reasons for it. You could see it wasn't exactly the same as the other maps.
Yeah, but what do you guys make of it? Because I believe I spoke to some people behind the scenes, like the people hosting TrackMania. They say, okay, so Rator is giving us visibility, is giving the game visibility. Why are the community so negative towards it? So why are people so negative towards it, Bits?
I think it's just the case that they're not used to those kind of maps, and since Tech is like the dominant style throughout TrackMania for so many years, they're just used to that style, and it's hard to deviate from it once you're used to it, especially like the top players. That's like mainly what they play. So yeah, it's pretty difficult to deviate from the regular maps. And I think it's just the Zeratak map especially. It was a weird one, especially with the grass slides and things like that. I don't think people enjoy to play it that much as other maps, but it's sort of a trend that I would like to see changed. Like, I would like to see different styles of maps. Maybe not this extreme, but like slight changes to make it more diverse, if you will.
Yeah. And Scotty, do you think that maybe adding a map like this even scared more people away than it eventually helped recruiting people to go to La Catalane?
Well, certainly, I mean, by the number of participants, it didn't look to have helped that much with only 12 people going. But with the map itself, because I actually played the map a good bit, because I was making sure I had learned it for, being able to cast it well enough. And it wasn't that terrible of a map in terms of what people normally fear when it comes to Zerator maps, as in, some maps that are just blind luck, or some maps that just have no sense to them whatsoever. Whereas this one, I mean, there was a few kind of odd sections. Example, the middle section where there's just a bit of track cut out in the middle. You need to go into the left side, turn around again, and then go through the small gap on the right side. I mean, small parts like that are a bit just, when you, from a mapper's perspective, I'm sure that would have been giving some of our established competition mappers a bit of a headache. And as well with the grass slide, I'm sure that would have been giving some of the players a bit of a headache, knowing they had that in front of them, where some of your established tech players might not be familiar with how to pull that off as well as, say, a Brenner or Winglebear showed they were capable of doing. But I don't think it would have really scared people off that much, as for the established tech community, those who were going to go to it were people who were going to be going to Gamers Assembly anyway, and that would have been the incentive, as in they're thinking the long-term game. So I don't think it made that much of a difference. It might have even made more good than it done harm, if you're looking at it just from a participant's point of view. Maybe not, but at the very least, I don't think the map itself had as much impact as people, kind of look at it.
If I ask you, Scotty, do you think that we will see La Catalane hosting a second edition? And if so, what do you think the community will react to it? Will more people show up? Will it be the same number? How do you see this event moving forward?
Well, I think Draconia have big plans for it because, I mean, it says a lot when they're going on to organise their own event. So, I mean, kudos to them for, you know, sticking their neck out like that and trying to host things on by themselves, and including TrackMania in that list is definitely something I want to see going forward. It will be a cause for concern for people because the main kind of thing I think the concern was with Zerator's map being involved is he has his own style that he has brought into fruition. I mean, through his exposure. I mean, even a lot of, you know, ZRT diehard, you know, players will say if there was no ZRT, it's very likely they would not play maps like this. They would, you know, say play LOL maps, fun maps, but they wouldn't play maps like this, as, you know, some of them don't make sense, some of them don't flow very well, some of them just aren't really enjoyable to play. Don't get me wrong, he's had his good maps as well. That's not necessarily a reflection on him as a mapper, more as a style in itself. But what the problem is with that is I think people have a concern over Zerator influencing scenes which he isn't necessarily a part of. As in, people perceive that as him holding sway over the tech community. And the tech players are getting concerned about that because tech players are notoriously quite against the Zerator style. They don't really like it. At least that's been the general attitude from a lot of tech players. They don't seem to like it. They don't seem to welcome a lot of the Zerator style. Well, they might play the tournaments and stuff like that, but I think that is a concern for a lot of the tech players who would normally go there. As you know, is this going to be a condition of Catalane being held going forward, that it needs to have, you know, these kind of maps as part of it? Then that might push people away. But realistically, this is just a lot of fortune telling. You know, this is just me taking a stab at what might happen in a year's time. So really, it depends to see what Draconia and how they want to move with it going forward. If they want to integrate more of the Zerator, they need to look into how that will affect the communities for the games they are looking to have him integrate, so to speak.
Yeah, but what should La Catalane move forward with? Should they simply say, okay, we tried this radar thingy, maybe it didn't work out, so now we'll just go back to tech? Or should they maybe even say, okay, we want to test this radar thing even more, and maybe more maps like that, more maps that maybe is more about the show rather than just the skills? How should La Catalane move forward, Bits?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, they should be steering more towards this Zerator style mapping, and just more for the show, as you said. I think it suits them more than the other events. Because we got enough of them that are purely tech, and I think it could be an interesting twist to spice it up and maybe attract even more players. Who knows? Maybe after players saw this edition, they'll want to attend the next one if they know there's gonna be a few more that kind of maps.
Yeah, and talking about show maps or mixed maps, I don't know what to call the styles of aliens and casual maps. Scotty, it was Bren who ended up winning it. How surprising is it that Bren wins a cup like this when it's multiple styles and maybe tips and tricks here and there?
Oh, well, it's definitely not a surprise. Bren's showing, I mean, since I remember he was even in team, I think it was 402 way back when I started in 2015. I know that'll make you feel old bits when I'm saying I started in 2015, but it wasn't my intention, I can assure you. But at least even going back to then, when he was primarily more known as an RPG player before he really had his breakout into tech, he was already a very, very well-versed player. He could play tech, he could play dirt, he could play RPG, and of course, full speed relatively easier to pick up on a basic level as well. And since then, he's grown in leaps and bounds. You'll have seen him winning or being at the very top in spam weeklies, Zerator Cups, which of course incorporate a numerous a wide base of skills. It's really not surprising to see him at the top of a ANC Cup type tournament. Of course, little asterisk to that is, of course, it's not a one-man team. Team Bren managed to take that home with a lot of the those who were part of Team Bren. So not surprising that he's the captain in charge, but, certainly all kudos to them for taking it home with him at the helm.
Okay, so I believe there was like 2 competitions hosted in Aliens and Casuals. So Team Bren also won the Team Cups, or? Because I know he won the solo events.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I was referencing.
I haven't seen the Team Cup. Have any of you guys?
Actually,
I think it was Dofold's team that won.
yeah,
okay.
that's right. I get the names mixed up. But yeah,
Brett takes all the honor. He wins by default.
Well, what can we say? I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if I was to look into a bets channel in a certain someone's Discord and everyone would have voted Brent. But yeah, it's definitely not surprising to hear he's won a tournament like this. I mean, this is his bread and butter. There's a lot of players who can challenge him in this sort of event, but more often than not, he's going to be head and shoulders above them.
Yeah, Bits, what is the feeling you are left with when you see Bren winning the solo event? Was it deserved, or was it this like a final that could have gone either way and it was just because he maybe had his favorite map in the end that he won? Or was it overall him being the best player?
Oh, he was clearly by far the best player on the grand final. I think he had like a 40 or 50 point lead when he got finalist. It was something ridiculous. But on every single map, he was clearly having the most first places, being the most consistent. There was just no argument against him winning. He was too strong. And
you go ahead.
No, okay. Another issue that I wanted to touch upon is that I couldn't watch the entire tournament just because it was clashing with other tournaments like TMGL, TMM. So it was a pretty bad timing to have the cup on that weekend, just because there were TMM matches going on at the same time, and also on Sunday when there was a solo part, there was also some other TMM matches and also Grand League. So it kind of split the viewers in that sense. Maybe they could have had more if they picked a different date, but that's not something you can always organize well. But yeah, it was still a decent event to watch. I enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah, what do you guys think of having a cup that includes all team events and then solo events, but not also just casuals and then aliens? Aliens meaning the best players. I myself didn't watch the team cups. I don't know how that worked out. But Bits, what do you think of having a part where, okay, the sole or the casual player can play on a team with the best players, and then the day 2 just the best players competing for themselves?
Yeah, I think it's overall one of the best formats. Just if you want to attract like the casual players and not have a super high level event, and that's what you got the solo competition for. I think it's like it should be looked more closely upon, just because it's. From looking from outside, it's really a compelling event to attend, even if you're not planning to win it. That's what I feel about it.
And Scotty, what do you think about having a team event day 1 and then maybe a solo cup day 2?
It was a really, really welcome change, because I remember playing the previous ANC Team Cup, and one of the problems was with that. I mean, imagine you've trained these maps for hours and hours and hours, and you're one of the best players in the world in it. You'll toast the competition, no problem. You have no control over who's part of your team. So you could end up with a team of players who maybe aren't as confident on these sort of maps. Maybe they overperformed in time attack seeding, for example, and you end up with a team that's not going to get you anywhere in the tournament. You could get dead last. So this way you have the concept of aliens and casuals still being accommodated. Players who are more casual, who are just going into this early on, maybe aren't as skilled as your top players, still get the chance to play with players they may look up to, players that they can learn from and socialise with during the duration of this cup. And you still have players being able to showcase their true skill and be rewarded for it in the solo edition, which I think was a very important change to implement, so that, exactly as I said, there was reward for the effort that people were putting in.
Let's move over to, of course, the hottest topic in TrackMania in 2019 is the TrackMania Grand League. I recently, or I guess it's 2 weeks now since I posted the article about the 15 players who are still left in the event that also play the steps previously share their opinion, share their feelings about it with simply answering 4 questions. Bits, I asked you about the event and how you feel about the overall experience, things you want to change. For people who haven't read the 3,000 words on huntmania.net, can you share what do you overall think about TrackMania Grand League when 5 steps had been played?
Yeah. Well, I didn't reveal too much just because I promised we're gonna do another podcast at the end, and
Oh,
I'm
here we
gonna
go.
like expand on it. But yeah, well, it's a mixed feeling because on one hand, I think it looks good for the viewers, but as players, there's definitely some improvement to be made, and certainly from the organization's standpoint, there's some things I'd like to see change, especially more people involved. And well, I can touch upon it here. Just the fact that Nadeo is less and less involved in the decision making and organizing the event itself. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see changed. More organization, more listening to community. That's another key point. But I guess we can expand upon it on later on in another podcast.
But playing it, have it changed from, let's say, the feeling you had in step 1 compared to now the latest step 6? The playing, is it just a feel any different, or is it still the same kind of feeling you have when you play it?
Well, certainly at the beginning it was pretty difficult to adjust just because of the different map styles, etc. But I think after like 3 events, these maps are sort of natural to play for us. I think I'm speaking for most of the players. It just feels like you don't need that much time to learn them. It's just about cutting corners where you can to gain like hundreds where necessary. But I think most players are getting used to this kind of map style. And I think the level is just going to increase more and more as the tournament goes on.
Yeah. And Scotty, what is your overall feeling now that 6 steps have been played of the TrackMania Grand League?
Well, I think it was important, first of all, I kind of went through a process where when I started off and I heard a lot of the information about it, I was really apprehensive towards it, and I was quite outspoken against it. I think it was important for me to kind of invest myself in the in the streams and in the qualification process when the Open Qualifier came about, get myself involved, experience it for myself, and really kind of make my own opinion of it. And I mean, along with what Bits said, and I can sympathise with a lot of the kind of concerns and the feedback that's been posted, but I do see that it's at least becoming a bit more of a spectacle now. The players are used to what they're playing, they know what to expect, and it's just a question of now who adjusts best and who kind of reacts best to whatever the kind of the obstacles are getting thrown at them and things like that. But again, as Bits touched on there, it is a bit more concerning to see now that with what was one of the main positives going into this is that Nadeo were having a very big involvement with the community, where they were communicating a lot in the Discords and such. They were invested in, taking feedback and reacting to it, or giving us updates, pluses, minuses, things like that. That's a bit of a concern that's now faded away as the season's gone by. But again, it is a beta season. It might be something we'll see, at the end. They'll kind of round things up and move from there. But I think the tour, it's kind of settled into its rhythm now, and as far as I'm concerned, it can only grow from here. Whether people will begin to like it or like it more, like it less, I mean, I'm still a bit on the fence of how I actually feel about it, but I can appreciate it as a spectacle, and I can hope, at least for the scene's sake, and for the work that the organisers have done into it, that only goes from strength to strength.
I'm sure we probably do a podcast when all the steps are done and we can talk about it for 1 hour and 2 hours, so not in terms of 10 minutes here. But let me ask let me ask you guys this, because it's probably more relevant now than it would be after the step 10 is over. Who do you guys see making it? Who do you see winning it? Scotty, if I ask you first, who gonna win this beta season and be the winner after 10 steps, and who is gonna be the 8 players you see making it?
Well, I can only see Carl Jr. as the winner after the 10 steps, purely because of the way the point system works, as in the points that he has gathered after each step just accumulate straight into his points total. So when the worst step gets deducted away, he's still going to be head and shoulders above the rest. Unless he makes a massive amount of mistakes in the remaining steps, then there is just a massive amount of points that he has even over Pack. Sure, Pack can drive amazing, rounds and get himself some good points, but I don't think he's going to overtake Carl. But I do think he'll join him in the top eight. I see people like, Kappa, Cap, Papu, and such joining him. I think it will be close to see the likes of Danik B and Roland. I want to see them getting in the top eight if they can. Of course, it's from me personally. I don't say I prefer this person over this person, but I'd like to see them getting an opportunity, as especially Roland has came more into his own in the later stages of the tournament. And I'll be very interested to see if there's anything Massa can do to get himself into the top eight. But it's a bit hard to tell at the moment, but I think the top five are definitely solidified. I mean, the likes of Carl, Pack and such, that I don't think that's going to change. But the lower positions, we might see a bit of a shake-up.
And Bits, who do you see winning it then? Like the same, who do you see making it in to the potential playout that is yet to be at least officially announced?
Yeah. Well, as I predicted before the event, I think it's hard to make the case against Carl Jr. I didn't know how serious he was going to take it, but he's clearly surpassing my expectations, and I don't think there's a chance. It's hard for him to lose, let's put it that way. But who impressed me more was Pac. I thought he was going to struggle more on these different style maps than he did, but he's actually very close fighting with Carl Jr. And it could be a crazy final between those two if it goes to further stages of the tournament, or I don't know how it's gonna work exactly, but there's possible LAN for top 8. We're not sure about that. So yeah, it's gonna be either, I'd say Carl Jr., but I think Pac is gonna give a good fight for first place. And Kappa is certainly stepping up. He started pretty weak in first steps, but maybe it's because of other LAN events and such. But on the last few steps, he's really been in the top 5 on most maps, and it's really nice to see as a keyboard player.
And who do you see making it into the playoffs? Is there any battles that the viewers should watch more carefully because you think it's going to come down to either this or this person to make it into the playoff?
Well, I think the standings are pretty clear at the moment. Let me check exactly. Well, currently Cap is on 8th with 92 points, and the next guy is Roland at 68. So that's an interesting fight that we should be looking out for, because Roland is sort of picking up steam at the moment and really performing well lately. So if he keeps it up, then maybe he could reach top 8. But other than that, I think it's pretty settled. It's only, say, Papu, Scrappy, and Cap who have similar points and could go down to 9th place, but it seems unlikely as there's not that many steps and it's hard to make up 30 points in this system.
I had a question of the week, I believe it was last week. I asked people, will Massa make it into the playoffs and be top 8? I believe 75% of the people said yes. But if I ask you, Bits, is Massa going to make it into the playoff?
Sorry, what was the question?
Will Massa make it into the playoffs at TrackMania Grand League?
Yes, that's what I wanted to touch upon. Certainly, the first step for him turned out as bad as it could, I guess. Just because he had, I think, 33 points going into the last map, and he managed to make one mistake, and he was out with 1 point. So, if I'm right, the rule still applies to him, which is your worst step doesn't count.
Yeah.
So basically, he has 5 steps remaining, and the worst one is going to be eliminated. So he only has 4 steps. So let's say this one was his worst. So he has 4 chances to gain at least about 100 points. So you'd need around I'd say about 30 points every single step. And that's possible knowing Massa, but it's certainly not going to be easy, and he can't afford any mistakes whatsoever. So if I had to say, I think I'd be leaning on the side of no, but maybe we'll see.
And Scotty, what do you make of it? Are Massa gonna make it, or is he gonna see the playoff from home?
I think by the end of things, he is going to end up seeing it from home, because I think the important thing to remember with the top eight is, sure, it is like an 100 points gap at the moment. There is the argument. I mean, max points you can end up getting through that is 100 or close to 100, if I'm right. I forgot exactly how the point system works. So, I mean, in an ideal world, he could catch up in one round, but it's still, to this time, we've not seen someone max out their points. But I mean, we've saw how Carl Jr.'s kind of extended his lead over the championship. If Massa manages to get one good round in, then he's already overtaken a good few people. And, building upon that should come a bit more easier to him, because we've always known he's a high risk, high reward player who he can make the best of the sort. And we've seen in the qualifier as well, he did perform extremely well. He was extremely strong in his pace as well. However, he did kind of falter a little bit when it came to the actual step, and of course made some key mistakes. But the important point I was looking to get back to is, sure, it might be 100 points at the moment, but that by no means is going to stay like that. I mean, the top eight are going to pick up points. They're going to move forward. Say, person in 8th place might pick up a good amount of points and overlap, and Massa might have an even more difficult time trying to catch up. So he needs to outmatch his opponents. He needs to look for, top 3, top 4 every step until then. And knowing Massa, going back to what I just said there, he is high risk, high reward. Now, the problem with that is it's a double-edged sword, as in that will work for him. He will get 1 or 2 stages where he will pick up a lot of points, but he'll have 1 or 2 stages where he will lose a lot of points for the very same reason, as we've seen that throughout Massa's tech career, and certainly where there's less margin for error in maps like these, and more punishment, more kind of pressure, higher stakes on the line, then I can only imagine those effects might still hold true.
Let's move over to the next event that is coming up this weekend, and it's going to be sort of a preview and recap here for the TrackMania Masters Team Cup 19. We are left with 3 teams. It's Planet Dynamics, Hardcore Power Drivers, and then Venture Esports. Scotty, if I asked you this before the event, would you have predicted that this was a possibility, that these 3 teams was the 3 remaining teams?
Well, Planet Key Dynamics were definitely, they've always been very strong at TrackMania Masters. I mean, the only reason they would have ever faltered in tournaments previous is lineup issues, as in players not being motivated or something to that effect. Venture are going to be a strong team no matter what maps you put them on, so you could have certainly put them in that list. Hardcore Power Drivers, to those who maybe weren't paying as much attention to them, they certainly kind of could have came as a surprise. But having looked at their lineup and seen the motivation they were coming into this tournament, I expected them to at the very least get top 5. So I'm not surprised, taking into account the other teams that had the potential to get that spot, that they have fell in the wake of HPD.
And Bits, what do you make of it now that we are left with 3 teams? Is there any team that you thought would be one of the top 3 teams? And is there any of the 3 teams left that you didn't see making it into the top 3?
Well, I was expecting to see a closer fight for, let's say, Elementaries and M&M, who certainly had a good match against Venture, but luck wasn't on their side on the second map, because if that had gone to the third map, who knows, maybe M&M would be in our spot right now. But speaking of the teams that are there, well, PKD was always a big contender to be at the top placements for TMM. But HPD was definitely not a name that I thought before the tournament, and they certainly surprised me. But when you look at their lineup, it's a bunch of great players, and I definitely see them challenging the remaining 2 teams. But I don't see them going further than that. I think they're gonna be top 3, and the top two, I don't know.
Hmm.
I still have to say Venture is gonna win, don't I?
You have to, of course.
How could I not? But certainly PKD has the upper hand right now. They haven't lost a single map. It's hard to make a case against them that they could lose, but I know Venture is motivated to win as well and to defend the title. So we'll see how that turns out this weekend.
Yeah, I'm doing this sort of prediction series on YouTube now to try to get some more attention around this TrackMania Masters. Maybe have more fun with it. So far, I believe it's gotten pretty shit. Like maybe 70% outcome, if at the best. You had insects fucking up a lot of matches for me, and then Hardcore Power Drive is also doing that. But Scotty, if you are to help me here, I put up the video today, or it will be yesterday since this is up today for people listening. So I put Planet Dynamics to win against Hardcore Power Drivers, then Power Drivers drops down to Venture, and Venture beats Hardcore Power Drivers, and then in the final I believe Planet Dynamics will beat Venture. Is this the same outcome that you see, or how do you see these matches playing out?
Right, so I'll kind of throw a spanner in the works because, as the iconic term goes, fuck it. So I'll say that Planet Key Dynamics will take out Hardcore Power Drivers, and I say that because I think they are unmatched in this tournament. They don't have players that have to worry about LAN events. They're on a hot run of form at the moment. They're looking good. And as I said, I believe these type of maps suit them more than any other team. They're all extraordinarily fast players. Shorter, easier maps do suit players who are, very fast. Your types of players like, what's his name, Complex, players like Dovey, who's in the lineup as well, Ken's. Like, these are, Ken's, of course, a very, very well-renowned, short mini player, has some of the fastest times in maps like this. And especially in TMM and maps like that, again, he's almost unmatched when it comes to that. And they have just such a well-rounded lineup, so I don't imagine they're going to lose to anyone this tournament. Hardcore Power Drivers, it very much depends how they approach this match, and I contrast that with Venture, and the point I'll go into in a second. So I do think HPD will fall to PKD. However, going into the consolidation final, my head and all my brain tells me that Venture will take it. However, there's a lot of circumstance you need to take into account with that. I mean, Venture have a great number of players who are going to be having to focus on other tournaments. We've got our lovely, beautiful man Bits here, who will having to be worrying about TMGL. Either I don't even know if it's in the same weekend, but it's going to be around. It is in the same weekend. There you go. That's something Bits has to worry about. That might even count him out. And then you have, if I'm right in saying, at least 3 or 4 players from Venture who have got Gamers Assembly the very next week. Yeah. So I can imagine a lot of their time in TrackMania is going to be focused elsewhere on than just TMM. Now, they do have a very well-rounded squad to kind of pack that out and soften the blow. But the important thing is for HPD there, this is the furthest they've been either ever or in a very, very long time. And have always been that team that's on the cusp of getting into the Premier League. They're kind of the gatekeepers of the Open League One. And now they've got their older players back. They've got the likes of Optimus back. They've got PP Master who's coming into play. Of course, a very well-renowned player from days gone by. And they've got their old squad coming back that have always been strong, but they've never been able to get the team the next 10%. They've now brought in Barboss, who was on a hot run of form through... I believe it was THE, Mimo, and then PKD took a break off. Now he's back. And of course, Onyo, one of the very best players in the world. So if they're committed to going further and taking this tournament as far as they possibly can, I can see them putting up an extremely strong challenge to Venture. And perhaps I could imagine Venture underestimating a team like HPD as going into it might not have thought too much of it. And as we can see by getting to this point, they've shown a lot of teams up for underestimating them.
And Bits, he brings up the question: how well or how much do these players in Venture Squad take this TrackMania Masters Team Cup seriously? You have Dutchy, you have Psychos, and you have Wagenchi attending to Gamers Assembly, and then you have yourself at TrackMania Grand League. how is the feeling inside the squad? Is it like, okay, we take this TrackMania Masters Team Cup 100%, or maybe we have other stuff to focus on this year?
Yeah, I mean they're certainly motivated, but yeah, it's a point that I completely forgot, the fact that those three like top players of our team are gonna be attending GA, and at least Dutchy said already he's gonna be focusing on that and not put as much time into TMM that he could. So that's already quite a big problem, and certainly I can see an upset from both of the other teams happening. Uh, and speaking for myself, well, I wasn't really planning to play. Maybe I could have, but just because I knew Grand League was going to be clashing again, it just wasn't an option. So we didn't even consider it. But we were lucky to have a deep pool of players to fall back on, and good ones at that. Especially Dan has been impressing me lately, and Kimi has his ups and downs, but he's also bringing up our team in a positive note. So it's going to be interesting to see. I can't really guess one way or another, but we're certainly going to be crippled for the remaining matches. And still, the motivation in team is pretty high to win, but I can't speak more to that. I don't know.
But if we ask you this after the event is over, we might be left with, like, say, Planet Dynamics winning, Venture winning, or Hardcore Power Drives winning. But what players should be giving, like, let's say, a potential most valuable players award? What players has been the most outstanding to you, Bits, in this tournament?
Well, certainly from the match of who was it? PKD. Oh, it was PKD Venture. Imagine that. Was it Complex or am I?
It was Complex.
Yeah, it was Complex. He was godly in that match, at least on map 1. It's one of the best performances of an online, I guess, in TMM that I've seen so far. And certainly they got so many good players. I think it has to be Complex that's gonna be rated the best player if he keeps it up. Because on the second map, that he took quite a few rounds to warm back up again. But after that, he was still a good force to be reckoned with. And if there's one guy, I think it has to be him. I can't really think of any other names coming to my head right now.
And Scotty, who do you see being the most valuable players and being the best player alone in this tournament?
Well, it's hard to pick out a singular player. I mean, first of all, because you need to have kind of watched all of them to kind of get a good judge of that. But for example, looking at the match between UB Team and Runtime, I remember one of the maps, Zad won, I think it was 60 to 70% of the rounds, and the other ones he had, an extremely high finish position. He again had, one of the performances much like our Complex did, or perhaps even, dare I say, a bit better, and has been a shining star for his team throughout pretty much the whole tournament. Of course, with UB Team, another one of those teams which is hurt a lot by players that were focusing on LAN, and players the likes you'd think they'd normally depend on, Roa, Yo-Yo and Kronos, really not participating much in this tournament. It was left to those players who normally kind of lurk in the shadows of such big names in France like that to carry them over the line. And Zad was certainly, in top form for a lot of this tournament and put in, as I said, a fantastic performance against Runtime. And, Runtime might have been more expected to take that, and UB Team certainly showed them otherwise. And a lot of that, I would say, is down to him.
Let's try to wrap this up. We are closing in on the 1 hour mark, but we have one topic left, and it's the upcoming Gamers Assembly. We have, I believe, 125 players or around that signing up at the moment, and then having like 7 or 8 slots left for some events there. The tech event is fully signed up with 64 out of 64 slots. So what is that a sign of, Scotty? Is that a sign of TrackMania moving forward? How do you make of this sort of slot situation?
Well, since I started going to GA, so 17, I didn't really manage to check the planning stage and stuff of 2016. This is by far the most TrackMania players I've seen going to a single LAN event, apart from Giants Cup. As Giants Cup was, of course, structured a little bit differently, but this is a fantastic amount of people going to all events. And as I was bringing up to people previously, it's great to see so many names there that I've not seen either going to a LAN event in a long time, or I've not seen going to a LAN event at all. Example in those not at all, we're seeing a lot of the M&M guys go. You know, the likes of Nevermind, who's not been to participate in one of these LANs before. I believe Zykos hasn't been to one of these LANs before. And then you look at players coming back who haven't been in a while. The likes of Onyo coming back. We're having Spam coming back to participate in this LAN after, you know, kind of not having a lot of interest. Or, of course, I understand he's yet to make his decision. Symbios and such. So it's going to be really interesting, as it's one of the most stacked tech LANs we've had, as in, apart from the exclusive ones like the World Championship. And given that the other tournaments are so stacked and packed out with, you know, nearly at full capacity, it's really refreshing to see, and it shows me that TrackMania still has a good bit of miles left in it.
And Bits, what do you make of the players who has signed up? Is there any names that sticks out for being a potential winner of, let's say, the tech event?
Oh yeah, sure. There's quite a few of them, and I just wanted to address the same point that there's so many players going to this event. It's one of the biggest I've seen, and I'm glad about it. And speaking of the tech players, there's so many good players here that it's so hard to predict who's gonna win. Like I wrote down for like the pros, you got Cap and Pack, Kappa, Twin, Yo-Yo, Dachi, Onyo, and probably Masa.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of challengers like who can certainly make an upset. So we got Omnipods, Nevermind, Agir, Wag, Zykos, Piranha, Alexor, and some others like Asur, Zad, Shelly, Raptor, and of course, the one and only Scotty.
Yay! Kronos is going as well. He's just not signed up under his own name.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's one more name. But since you asked who's gonna win, it's gonna be a tough fight, I think, between Pac and Kappa, just because those two are so into the game right now and so on such a high level and a bit ahead of the others. Since we don't have Carl Jr. here, I think those are the clear two favorites. And out of those two, who's gonna win? I still think it's gonna be Pac, just because of his overall performance on like all styles, and I think he's just more consistent in general. But I'd like to see Kappa prove me wrong. It's gonna be a hell of a final, I'm sure.
Yeah, looking at, there are so many names here, but I would make the case that out of the players signing up at the moment, I would say that you have 4 players who should make it into the grand final if they perform at the level. Of course, that is always a asterisk and maybe all not the case. I have Kappa making it, I have Twin making it, I have Pac making it, and I have Masa making it into the grand final if everything goes as normal. But Scotty, do you see anyone else maybe pushing out 1 or 2 of these names? And do you agree with these 4 players? They should be the ones in the grand final.
I don't agree with it, and I think it's an important thing that people are forgetting going into this. Normally when we've been going into GA or when we've went into TrackMania World Championship, we've not really had other tournaments that these players have had to be worrying about. However, 3 of the people, if I'm correct, I completely forgot who you said, so I'll just guess.
Twin is not the one, yeah.
Yeah, so Tween is the only one in that 4 that you mentioned that isn't going to TMGL. Now, while I understand that certainly players can play both map packs at the same time, first of all, the stakes are far higher for TMGL. So I imagine that players like Pac, say for example, where he has a lot more to gain from training TMGL, is not going to put as much time as he normally would into Gamers Assembly. Masa, who has to make a big gap up in TMGL, is going to focus a lot on that compared to how much he would normally focus on this side of a LAN. Kappa wanting to get himself some more prize money, perhaps, want to get himself closer to the top 2 in TMGL. I could imagine him, you know, again, notorious, well known as Kappa for, you know, sinking a very, very high amount of hours into GA and TMGL and such, will he be able to do so now that he's got TMGL? Because before, I mean, maybe we had a team tournament that these people could just, or they'll leave it to their other team members to kind of pick up the slack while they go and focus on a LAN event, much like I've done, unfortunately, for Eminem. But what I think is important about this, because these players won't be 100% focused on GA, this opens the door for players who would be on the verge of getting into the grand final. So we're talking about players like Omnipots, who I believe was one of the last qualifiers to the grand final last year. We're talking about people like Symbios, Onyo, and things like that. The Spam, of course, although he might be suffering from the same kind of trouble. Dutchy, perhaps even Ager, if he manages to retain the kind of form he's shown online. Cap. There's a lot of these players. Oh, sorry, Cap again's another one who's been going through this. I'm just listing off names here, but these are a lot of players who now have a bigger opportunity to get into the grand final that they wouldn't have had they had to worry about going up against a fully focused and fully trained member of the traditional top four. So I think that one of those names that you have said will not make it. My money's on Massa, as he's kind of signed up a bit later on. I don't imagine him having as much time to train. So I imagine the momentum not going his way as he would like it. And perhaps maybe Omnipot's getting his nose in there, or depending on how much he's trained or how rusty he is, perhaps Onyo can get his first stadium grand final.
Yeah, but certainly Massa is going to have problems with the GA, but you have to look at the leaderboard and say that maybe Pac and Kappa, they're pretty solid at the top of a scoreboard, so I think they could afford to either miss a step or not train as much and focus more on the GA. But yeah, it's certainly going to be a factor, and we might see someone drop out earlier than expected. And I forgot that Spam is just registered to the tournament, so it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to make it far. But we pretty much know Spam and his limits, so I don't think he's going to be in the grand final, but maybe close to it.
So we talk about now the top of the top and maybe the grand finals and who the favorites for that is. Bits, if I ask you this, can you mention one or two players that you see making this sort of upset, if you want to call it that, to make it into a grand final, to maybe surprise people? Someone who might be going under the radar for, let's say, people like myself who said that is for people who is already in the grand final.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see the list. I think, the first name that stands out, I think it's Onyo, who's really solid playing lately. He's always like in and out of the game, but when he comes back, he's always playing higher than he was before. And he was certainly performing great in the Grand League qualifier, and I expect him to play really well in the next event, which is GA. Out of the others, maybe Omnipots, but I don't know about his motivations, if he's gonna take it seriously or not. He's had some of these problems before. Other than those two, I don't know. I'd like to see WAG at his full potential, but he seems to be crumbling when it comes to LAN events and important matches.
And Scotty, if you look at the list and maybe look outside the people that you think are maybe the top favorites, but looking at players who might do something here, might surprise people, what kind of names does come to mind?
Well, I think Symbios is one that definitely can't be discounted. I mean, Symbios showed, I believe it was back in the Gaming Winterfest, that he is an extraordinarily strong player. He can get both the fast times and he can be consistent, but he also has the esports students final to worry about. But if he's managed to fully focus on Gamers Assembly, I can imagine him going very, very deep into the tournament. Again, the likes of Ager, I can predict going very well. Yo-Yo has had a lot of match practice on this from Catalane. He's already showing he can perform very well. I mean, maybe it's time for a resurgence coming up from him. I'm very interested to see what Zykos does in LAN, but I don't picture him putting in as much time as to reach his full potential. But other than that, I mean, I'll say Onyo can go very far, and also one I'm curious to see if they'll get very far as the likes of Barboss, as I remember him only just missing out on a Mania Planet World Championship spot way back when. So if he's prepared very well for this, then I'm sure he can still go far.
Let's briefly talk about the 3 other events, because it's not only tech here. We have Full Speed, we have Dirt, and we have Canyons. Do you guys see any clear favorites going into those events? If I start with you, Scotty, who do you see as some favorites in each of those styles?
Well, for Dirt, it's always going to be hard to see past Papu. However, I can see one of our upcoming Dirt Players of the Year, Coach Show, is coming in, and he's had his chance. He's been as fast as the very top players in Dirt for quite a long time. What he mostly struggled with was getting the consistency in matches, but now we have a lot more high-tier Dirt players than we did last year, if I remember correctly. Orel's had his time to settle into the discipline and managed to get himself faster and faster. We have Firestorm, who's participating here for the first time, as far as I'm aware. Krim, very, very high-level Dirt player. And then you've got the traditional lot like Fire, Kulus, Pilu, and the likes of this. Of course, Fire, is as close as he's ever been to taking out Papu last year. Then you go into Full Speed, which does seem much less stacked than it was last year. Last year, you had a lot of Against All Authority players coming in, and the only one who's returning this year is Kid. So, I mean, I don't really see much players there who can defeat Kid, so perhaps it's going to be a clean sweep from him there. It's more the slots after that I'll be interested to see. And Canyon, there's not a lot of established not a lot of established Canyon players who are actually returning this year. I mean, I recognise names like Frankos and Eonha, but there's no Quinton this year, and the likes of the players who were present the last 2 years to really challenge for the top names. So I think Canyon might be a bit more of a interesting one to keep an eye on to see who comes out on top.
And a bit looking at the players signing up for Dirt, Full Speed, and Canyon, who do you see winning it?
Well, starting with Canyon, I don't really know many of these players. I looked at the list and I really have no idea for that one. You'll have to trust Scotty's word for that one. And yeah, that's never good, is it? And for Full Speed, well, the only solid name I saw was Kid, and I don't think it's gonna be close, knowing how good that guy is. But going towards Dirt, I'm surprised to see how many great players there are this year. So we got Coolis from Fox and Kocho, Venture Fire, Firestorm, Papu, Aurel, Krim. And of course, Papu is always favored to win that one. But he also has to play a Grand League, so I'm not sure how that's going to go for him. Maybe his level is going to drop, or maybe he's not going to have enough time to play. But I think the wild card for me is going to be Fire, just because from what I saw, he's always been really good. And the last event, he almost beat Papu. It was a very close fight, so I'd like to see him win this one. But I guess the favorite is still Papu. And yeah, and maybe Fire second.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Let's talk about the last topic, at least I have for Gamers Assembly. It was recently announced that the main final or the grand final of the tech event will be played on some sort of secondary stage instead of the biggest stage and the first stage. What do you guys make of this bits? If I start with you, what do you think about now that tech is maybe taking a step down in terms of what it had last year, being on the biggest stage then, but now just the second biggest stage at Gamers Assembly?
Sorry, what was the question? I got cut out again for some reason.
The question is about the stage. Last year was the biggest stage. This year it's going to be the second biggest stage. What do you make of it?
That. Yes. Well, I don't really have much of inside information on that one, but I'm sure it's not going to be as pleasant to watch or to play for players, but I don't have an opinion on that, I'm afraid.
Oh, then we turn to the man with opinions. Scotty, what do you make of it? You have been to Gamers Assembly. Can you explain to people, is this difference or is this change any making any difference for people who want to attend or people who just go there to watch the matches?
That is definitely an unwelcome change. I mean, there is a good reason for it, as John gave the info earlier today. The primary stage is fully paid by sponsors. So, I mean, fair enough, it's not as if, TrackMania has just been shunted into the background just because it's not as interesting. It's, that there's a monetary reason behind this, so to speak, or an exposure reason or something like that. So, I mean, fair enough that it's not as if I can really, harp on at the GA admins for, this should be here instead of that. That's not really an argument that can happen, but that is definitely a downgrade. I mean, of course, I've spent 2 gamers assemblies cheering on the final, sitting there with, a few hundred people or however many it was, and the seating next, watching TrackMania on the big screen with the players, up on the stage. And don't get me wrong, they will still be in a stage and there'll still be a screen there, but the secondary screen is definitely a step down. I mean, the facility for it there is definitely a step down. And I think it will harm the atmosphere for those who are going to participate in the event who might not reach a grand final, for those who will be playing in these events on stage, and for those who'll be sitting there watching. It will still be worthwhile to go and watch it, but for those who have been there the few years, I believe there is definitely going to be a change noticed.
Okay, 1 hour and 10 minutes here. I'm running out the topics, but is there any topics that we should have recapped, or maybe we should have talked about coming up now? Pete, if I let you the word first, is there anything coming up that you want to share, or is there anything that has passed that you want to share with people?
I guess I'll just briefly mention the upcoming online event, which is Home Community Cup 3. It was the last edition was like half a year ago, I think, and it was a pretty good one. It's sort of mixed styles, like aliens and casuals kind of maps. And I think there's like €50 or €100 prize pool. I'm not exactly sure. And it's gonna happen on 27th of April. So on about 2.5 weeks or so. And yeah, I mean, if you want to find it, I guess you'll have to ask me on Discord or by other means.
Slide into my DMs.
Yeah, exactly.
And Scotty, do you have anything that we should have recapped or that you want to sort of give attention to that is coming up in the month of April?
Well, one that's going to be running alongside Gamers Assembly is the Esports Student Series, which has kind of culminated a lot of TrackMania players, of course, from France who were participating in that and qualified for the finals, which are going to be also played at Gamers Assembly. Some notable names that are going to be in the final, if I remember correctly, are Symbios, Coco, I think Ellie, also from Orcs is going to be there, and the last name of that list has fell away from me, but that's going to be something if you're ever wanting to kind of pack out your weekend, your Gamers Assembly weekend. I mean, apart from the likes of Game of Thrones, it's going to perhaps be in that kind of same category. Because I mean, let's be honest, TrackMania fans don't have social lives, so what else are we going to be doing in a weekend but watching TrackMania? So that will definitely give us something else to watch. I'm not sure what the stakes are up for it. I know pretty much nothing about it, not being a student from France, funnily enough, but it's going to be something I'm going to keep my eye on, either if it's going to be played there while I'm there, or just to see, looking back on it when I get the chance. It's something I'm interested to see, as in who was participating in this sort of tournament. Of course, being students from France, if there was a kind of wide range of players, or if it was just, tech players who are really good who just happened to be students in France. So I'll be interested to recap on it and see how it ends up.
Yeah, just for the facts, I believe it's €1,500 for the prize pool, so it's not that much smaller than the actual tech events at the Games Assembly. But I guess that's it for today and for this month. I'll try to have the next one up the next month, but you know me, it might be 2 months, it might be 3 months. Let's see when the next recap is coming up and when the next preview is coming up. But stay tuned for content here on this channel, and there will at least be some other podcasts coming up. Do you have any final words, guys?
No.
Things?
Well, no, not really. It's been emotional as always. I mean, what can I say? It's becoming a terrible trio now, so we can only hope that people love us enough to have us back, so that I can once again spend my evenings listening to the voices of which I've become so accustomed to ringing into my ears at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The,
Music to our ears.
I guess that's it. Bye bye, guys.
But
See ya.